Oh, man. Hey, by the way, who's going to hit 40? Who's going to do something in the next 44 days?
Oh, yeah.
Woo!
Let's go. Crush something.
Here's one.
Oh!
Here is two. There you go. Give me some time. Here you go. All right, perfect. Perfect. So I'm a little scared. I'm a little amped up right now.
Let's go!
We just came back from Vegas, so you know. So let me tell you what I believe. I believe that not everything that happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas. Now, I've been to Vegas several times, and I do want to leave a few things back. Okay, but some things you need to take with you, and you need to come back home with them. So here's a great picture. It's an awesome picture. I love this picture, not just because of the cool people who are in it, but because of what happened right before this picture. So right before this picture, I had gotten there a little bit early. This is a final party that was happening with EXP. They set it up in a place called Dre's Nightclub. It's a rooftop pool club. It is dope, right? We got there early. There was nobody in the club, and oftentimes when I do that, I just walk around, right? Because I want to feel things. I want to breathe stuff in. And if you notice here in the back, this is the pool area. I walk right to the edge to the back, and it gives you this amazing view of Las Vegas. And I realized something before I took that picture with the deal maker and Derek and everybody. I realized that there's something magical about Vegas, and I had lost it because I've been to Vegas a lot of times, right? And I would go in Vegas, and I would say, oh man, I've been to Vegas. I don't want to go to Vegas again, right? But when you look at something like this, you have to think bigger. Mm-hmm. You have to start asking yourself, what kind of person would think about building something so big? This is literally a replica of the Eiffel Tower. Like, these fountains right here, the first time I ever went to Vegas, my buddy took me out. I was 27 years old, I'm 42 now, went 27 years old, and he said, you gotta stay at the Bellagio, and you gotta get a fountain view room. And I'm like, all right, whatever, you know? So we get one. And, you know, about 8:15 p.m., whatever, I hear this. What the fuck is going on? I open up the curtains, and these fountains are shooting up 34 stories. And they're not just shooting up 34 stories, they're going to music, which is playing from the TV. Elton John is playing, and the fountains are shooting up and playing, and I'm like, who thinks of stuff like this? Like, who does this? And it's people who think big and play big, right? So something happened on the way there. Gil was sitting next to me on the plane, and he looked out the window, and this is what we saw. And literally, Gil turned to me, and he said, this shit doesn't make sense. And I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean it doesn't make sense? He's like, how do you just build a city in the middle of a desert? And I was like, dude, he's right. It's not just how big Vegas is. They built that shit in the middle of a desert. There's nothing but rocks, not even water there. Like, these people had to be like who picks here? Like, there's plenty of places in the United States, and you're like, nah, desert, right? So how do you go? How do you go from this to this? What has to happen for you to go from this to this? So let me bring poker into the game, right? Have you guys ever seen a movie called Rounders? Yes. Who's seen it? Raise your hand. It's a great movie. You should watch it. Matt Damon plays him. I love poker. If you don't know a lot about poker, I think poker is one of the most similar things to life that there is. Because here's the deal. I can't tell you why you got dealt the hand you got dealt. Neither can a poker player. You just get dealt the hand. It's really how you play the hand. I'm never going to be explaining to you why somebody grows up in an abusive environment, somebody grows up with great parents. I can't explain it to you, but I can tell you that it has to do everything with how you play the hand. Because have you seen people who seem to have it all and they just crash and burn? And then you see people who've got nothing, came from nothing. A couple weeks ago we talked about Brandy Troth. Husband took his life 13 years ago, and now she becomes an icon agent in her first year. What's the difference? It's the way she played her hand, right? So this was probably, you can barely see this picture. I used to think this was one of the coolest lines in the movie, and now I'm thinking different, right? So here's what happens. Matt Damon's character here, right? He goes up against this Russian guy named Teddy KGB. He brings all the money he's ever made in his life and saved up $30,000. And he's like, I'm gonna play this guy and I'm gonna win. Well, he didn't win. He lost it all. He played that big hand and he lost it all. And he ended up driving a truck right? And this is what he says. This is what he says in the movie. He goes, you don't hear much about guys who take their shot and miss. I'll tell you what happens to them. They end up humping crappy jobs and graveyard shifts trying to figure out how they came up short. I had a picture in my head of me sitting at the big table with Doyle sitting to my left, Amaretto Slim sitting to my right, playing in the World Series of Poker. And I let that vision blind me at the table against KGB. Now the closest I get to Vegas is West New York, driving down this lousy route from Knish to rounders who forgot the cardinal fucking rule. Always leave yourself an out. And I'd be like, dude, that's cool, man. Always leave yourself. I've lived my whole life with that concept, right? And it works in some places. I don't think you should bet it all on black in a lot of things, especially when I wouldn't risk my family on an investment. I wouldn't put everything on investment that I didn't de-risk and leave myself some options and some out. But when it comes to the hand you were dealt in life, there is only one way to play it. And you gotta play it big. There is no out. There is no out. You have no choice. I wrote this, so I spoke a couple months back at this event called Relaunch at Veronica, this biggest event I've ever spoken at, right? And I wanted to come with something special, so I wrote a poem for them, or spoken word. And I said this in part of the poem. I said this, I tell them life is like poker. You play the hand that you're dealt. It's your faith that puts you on top. I've seen a 10 and a 2 take a magnificent pot, and I've seen double aces get fucked on the flop. See, a lot of people miss that if you weren't a poker person, right? But a 10 and a 2 is a shitty hand. But a shitty hand wins all the time. Because the game is played by reading folks and by making your bets and about taking action. That's how you win games. It's not the hand you were dealt. Because the flop is the cards that come in the middle, right? You have the flop, which is the first 3 cards, the turn, and the river. There's 5 cards that come on top. You only get dealt 2. And you could have double aces, and that's the best hand to start with. But the minute they lay down the next 3 cards, your whole life can change. You can go from being the best hand to the worst hand. So don't worry about the fucking hand. You gotta play the hand big. This is Coach Burt. We talked about him before. Coach Burt. Coach Burt laid some stuff on us, right? He's the one that was talking about the beliefs. I've seen Coach Burt. Me and Gil saw him a few years back, 2018 at the 10X Con, because we go to big events. Even before we were EXP, we understood the power of big events. Misty and I went to Tony Robbins, changed our life. So I see Coach Burt, he comes up, and I've never seen him deliver this fire. He's the one that told you, start with your beliefs. When people ask you about EXP, well, let me tell you what I believe. I started this. Let me tell you what I believe. Not everything that happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas. That's how I started, right? So it's funny, I was writing notes like crazy. I was looking at Gil. Gil wouldn't even look at me. I've never seen Gil locked in. By the way, he's totally ADD. Gil is a squirreler, like I've never seen in my life. I literally was trying to get him to take a picture, to look at the camera, and he was like this. He was just locked in. And I was writing notes from Coach Burt, and I was like, okay, I'm done writing notes. I could tell he was wrapping up. He was about to get off stage. And then he said one last thing. I had to open up my phone again and write this down. And in a little country accent, he said, this ain't no practice life. And he walked off. And I was like, holy shit. I go, in one sentence, he summed up my belief. This ain't no practice life. See, I believe in God. I'm a spiritual guy. But nobody in this room can prove to me that there's an afterlife. I mean, you can believe it. I believe it. But you can't prove it to me. This is what you got. Right now. Not something you're leaving behind. This ain't no practice life. And you got one choice, and it's to play it big. So then I heard Grant Cardone come up on stage, right? So Grant Cardone comes in heavy, right? And he starts talking about the same concept. I realized it. I was like, this is the concept that I'm getting from this. So he tells this crazy story about how he had borrowed $50 million. He borrowed $50 million, right? And he was building up his empire in real estate. And then the market crashed and the bank started calling people's loans due, and they came to him and say, hey, we need that $50 million back. And he was like, what are you talking about? I've been making every single payment on time. I got everything, like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, we're calling you because we know you can pay the $50 million. And when he hung up the phone, he said, this game is rigged. It's rigged for the little man. Even 50 million is a little man in that game. You know what? You know how he came up with 10X? He realized that if he had a $500 million loan, they wouldn't wouldn't have called his ass. So he needed to 10x it. He needed to 10x it. He had to borrow more money so they couldn't fuck with him. And I was like, holy shit. But he said this. He said, the game is rigged for the little man, and it is. That's why we're doing what we're doing. We need to break free from this playing small shit. The game is rigged for the play small person. You ever heard that Bible verse? It's like, those who have will get more, and even those who don't have, even what they have will be taken from them. Ain't nothing truer than that. Because when shit goes bad in life, who do they come after? Who suffers? It ain't the people who play big, who've got the success or the money or the insulation. It's not them who suffers. It's always the little man. This is what Matt Damon says about that. Listen, here's the thing. If you can't spot the sucker in the first half an hour at the table, then you are the sucker. I don't want to be a sucker. Right? Because the reality is the game is rigged against the little man. So we got to become big men and women. Right? We got to play this thing big. So, we need some new problems. Right? Tony Robbins says if you don't have problems, you don't got life. So, it's not about not having problems, it's about getting better problems. Okay? I call them champagne problems. Okay? These are called champagne problems. This is my team, champagne problems. We played a little basketball tournament. Go ahead. Deontay, Dylan, Devin's here. So you see the shirts, I got champagne problems. That's what I believe. I said, hey, look, I got champagne problems. I want to get champagne problems. Matter of fact, some of you already have champagne problems and you're bitching about bullshit. Bullshit. You see all these kids here, these little smiling kids, all these kids here, they live in an orphanage in Mexico, in the murder capital of Mexico. You know what I never hear from those smiling kids? Is their victim story. They never told me. The only reason I know that one of them was found tied to a tree for many years like a dog is because the people who brought them in told me about it. The only reason I know one of the kids' parents got murdered for political reasons is because they told me about it. People who worked there told me about it. The only reason I know that one of the kids was at 8 years old on the street because his parents couldn't afford him, and surviving at 8 years old is because I asked him. Like, dude, would you be willing to tell me your story, man? Because he was grown now. He's like 21. I don't hear that shit from them. So some of you guys got champagne problems and don't even know it. So I'm going to tell you about some of the champagne problems that I want in 2022. I want some frame problems. I want to go to Gil and say, Gil, we're spending too much money on frames. Too much money on frames. I want to say, Gil, we're running out of space. By the way, you gave me this idea, Celeste, when we were at the party. You talked about the frames. I want to say, shit, Gil, we got to expand this wall. We're going to have to go all around until this whole thing is filled. No. And by the way, when that happens, we'll be in a new building anyway. Woo! Capping in this office should be a low standard. We got to play it. Say it again. Capping in this office should be a low standard. Low standard. Should be a low standard. I want some frame problems next year. I think you guys do too. Next thing I want is some space problems. Now, I'm just not talking about the office. Something funny happened the other day. So, Tom and Jillian, God bless them, they taught this amazing class about the new contract that came out, right? They taught it at the Citrus Club. I was planning to go because they're learning more about the contract than I did. So I was like, I got to learn about this contract. It's new, right? So I hit up Tom. I'm like, hey, man, I'm about to head over there. He's like, hey, man, did you register? I said, Tom, no, I did, but I'm a member of the Citrus Club. I gotta go in there. He's like, nah, man, they told me we're at capacity. Can't let anybody else in. And I was like, oh, all right. Was I mad about that? No. Hell no, I wasn't mad about that. That's a champagne problem. That's a champagne problem. And then finally, in 2022, I want some hater problems. I want some hater problems. I watched this comedian named Cat Williams. You guys ever seen Cat Williams? Yeah. He's like, man, I got 14 haters. I'm trying to get 16 by the end of summer. Look, guys, but I want you to get haters for the right reasons. You borrow some mine. Right. Get haters for the right reasons. Get haters because your light is shining so bright that it's hard for them to look at it. Right? And it makes the light shine on them as to what they're not doing, which is not playing big. Right? That's the kind of haters I want. Right? And we all should have them because if you don't got any of those, you're not doing enough. Who wants some hater problems? Yes. Fantastic. So let's talk about leaving a legacy. So I'll give Jessica Rodriguez some credit. She talked about leaving a legacy a few weeks back. Who is interested in leaving a legacy? Okay, Collier, what does that mean to you?
It means, much like what Gil was just saying, it means you change your name. It means that, for me, it means that my kids are proud of the name that they own because of what I've done. I believe that somebody in every family has to be the one that sacrifices so that the ones that come behind you don't have to sacrifice.
And I love that. I really do. Go ahead.
Can I just really focus on sacrifice being a beautiful word? Like, that means you gave up something for something way bigger. And you did something that most people are scared to do. Like, I've always been infatuated with the word, so I'm really, really glad Mike used that word.
That's amazing.
Really glad.
That's amazing. So, I'm cool with that. But I told you this ain't no practice life. And every time somebody talks to me about leaving a legacy, it's like they're leaving it for the future. For their kids. Hey, look, if I do have kids, right? I'm not just gonna give them a bunch of wealth, because I will not rob them of their struggle. I mean, I'm gonna make sure they get fed. I'm gonna make sure they don't have medical problems. But I ain't gonna rob them of the struggle. How many asshole kids grew up with money and you kill their desire? I'm not leaving shit. You understand? I'm not leaving shit. So I'm gonna pose to you a new philosophy. How about you live your legacy? Because this shit ain't no practice life. How about you live your legacy right now? Make sure you make as much impact in this life so that it carries on to the next life. Don't miss this life, because I don't know what's happening next. I know what's happening right now. Okay, and for you spiritual folks, by the way, I told you I'm a spiritual person, but I think there's a lot of bullshit in religion. A lot of bullshit. This is what I believe. I believe that a lot of people believe in God, but they don't believe God. Right? You understand? Right? What does God say? You were created in whose image? Who believes in a big God or a small God? Big God. Why are we acting like this? Why are you bringing me this bullshit? Like we have a small God. So I'll leave you with this. You can't honor a big God by playing small. I know that's right.
Hey, just want to let you know, Romano was actually listening to that. He's like, so Bobby likes poker. Why doesn't he show up to the poker?